answer. You and I got ourselves together in 2006 to do something that was groundbreaking. And it's one of the things, if you look back in history, was a milestone. And so you repeat that to some degree. Back in 2006, David.
Yeah, David, when we got together back in 2006, that was probably the beginning of some of the changes that happened here in Cobb County. It was groundbreaking, it was innovative, and it certainly was foreign. I mean, we had never did this type of thing before. And your coming to me and us getting together was probably, if I have to do a biography, and most people that know me since 2006 know that whenever I'm talking about something, you are certainly part of what made me who I am in Cobb County, and certainly was a part of the change that happened in Cobb.
You know, when we got together, and again, you can use what part of words I say, when we got together, we knew something had to happen. You could feel it in the winds.
Yes.
And we had never had any real overt racial issues, and we didn't want to start. So you and I conceived together the idea of getting people together. Everybody likes to eat together and go on trips together. It brings people together. And so just talk a little bit about sort of why we were doing it.
Well, I think I would put it like this, David, how once we got together and knew that there was to be a change in Cobb County, you were with the chamber, I was with the Cobb NAACP. And because you had a vision of how we could make it better here in Cobb County, I listened, I agreed, and then we proceeded to do something that had never, ever happened in Cobb County. You and I think Ellen Spiceland, your assistant at the time, was very key in saying, let's go to Birmingham. With that idea and conceived and put into motion, you had that we would invite key leaders here in Cobb County, get on a bus, and ride 2 to 3 hours together, most of us not knowing each other, and then stay in Birmingham, Alabama for 2 days. That was absolutely groundbreaking and unheard of. So you have now the leader of the Cobb County Chamber bringing our idea before maybe 30 of us went over to Birmingham?
We had 50. We had 25 black, 25 white.
Oh, wow. See,
that's
what I'm saying. Bringing 25 blacks and 25 whites to get on a bus together. Now, we're talking about '06 here in Cobb County. When this is certainly a time that this should be known all over. It should be part of history of Cobb County. That at that particular point in time, with 25 black leaders and 25 white leaders on a bus, not knowing each other, what kind of outcome would we have? It was absolutely amazing, but I don't want to miss this point either. Ellen Spiceland, who was David's secretary at the time, once we got together and knew that we were going to do this, we could never have did it without her. She took that ball, got the bus, got us seated there, got the hotel rooms in Birmingham, and everything that needed to be put a dot on and a T cross, she did it for us. So when we talk about that history, we cannot forget, and that's one of the things that I've learned as the leader of the NAACP. You have got to know that you can't do anything by yourself. So that's the only reason I'm putting Ellen in here, because I know we could not have did it. David had the vision. He brought people together, and it was implemented by all of us agreeing to spend 2 days in Birmingham.
So the structure of the trip was We met at Six Flags
Mm-hmm.
parking lot early in the morning.
Morning.
We
Mhm.
drove over to Birmingham and checked into an old hotel that had been remodeled right across the street from the church that was so part of the civil rights movement. I mean, walking distance. And we got everybody checked in, and then we went to the Civil Rights Institute.
Right.
And that was a way of having a lot of the people in the white community that didn't appreciate and understand what went on in the 60s in Birmingham. Then we had a wonderful dinner together with some civil rights leaders from the past.
Mm-hmm.
And really, after we finished that evening, everybody had heard from folks who have dealt with this issue in the 60s. What could we learn from it? Then we came back the next morning. We sat down and among ourselves came up with an action plan to take back
To Cobb County, which had never been happened before. But just like you said, the structure of that was, we met at Six Flags. And the Six Flags, the reason we met at Six Flags to get on this bus is because one of the participants that was going with us was the head of the Six Flags. Now, most of us on that bus had never truly interacted with each other. So it was good to meet the owner that was running Six Flags. It was also interesting for me to meet, at the time, I'm not sure whether she was the mayor of Powder Springs or not, but that was very, very key. And in that whole process, like you said, if we do the steps of that, how Mr. Connell came up with those 25 black leaders and 25 white leaders was very key and instrumental in moving Cobb County.
I would back that. We'll put something else in there.
Okay.
You got the 25 black leaders, not me.
Okay.
And you knew who needed to be on the trip. And I knew who needed to be on the trip. And we got folks together, as you've already said, that didn't know each other.
That's right.
So just restate that.
So what my part of the bus trip was to get African American leaders that had never interacted with white leaders. So David had the white leaders, I had the black leaders, and Ellen had the whole plan. So we made it work, but it was like I'm trying to think of some the black leaders that went. We had did Walter Robinson go?
Mm-hmm.
Walter Robinson went, and I'm trying to think of that picture. I can't think of the picture, but we took a picture at Six Flags with all of us getting ready to get on that bus. And if that shouldn't be archives not only for the chamber, it should be for Cobb County, Kennesaw State. It would just make for people really understanding the dynamics of that historical trip.
There's interesting, let me find something to show you. Where's my bag?
Is it in my car?
No, here it is.
Okay.
This is a visual. And I might even have you hold.
Watch it, David. Oh, hit.
I may actually have you hold it. I actually reread a part of this book. It's a history book written by a guy named Tom Scott. This is a history book written by Tom Scott.
I have that. We have that in our office. Okay.
The part where he talked about the racial issue changing, and when I told him about what we did, he was not aware of it. The change was happening. David Hankerson was selected, and things began to change in our culture.
Exactly.
Because of the trip, it just had the impact of making that change happen faster and smoother.
Definitely smoother, because one of the things, and as one of the participants of that trip, I knew when I came back that there was, I mean, you know, you can read in the paper, or you can see a person that you went on that trip with. You would never have had that opportunity unless you went on that trip. So once you come back from that trip, I know who I can't think the name of the lady over Six Flags, because we ended up on another board together. But all of the people that was on that trip, and it's not a leadership COB thing, this was more personal and more intimate, because you although you got a 50 passenger bus, you all still are interacting and talking in some way, because we had to introduce ourselves once we got on the bus and got started to Birmingham. And very key for us was the fact that the whites that were on that bus, you're going to a museum, an African American museum, which was probably one or two of the ones that was in the country at the time. And for you to go to that museum and see, okay, I can say, oh yeah, I know black people. But when you go to that museum and go through that museum, you see black people in a whole different way. You see our struggles. You see that, if you have lived in a world where you have never really known, maybe, why those black people are complaining about something. And I think ultimately one of our goals really was to know each other and to understand each other. We all live in this world together. And if they saw Deanne Bonner in trouble, I'm sure that probably 22 to 23 of those white people that were on that bus would have came to my rescue without a doubt. Because we got to know each other.
I know there was a lot of people who connected. You and I connected.
Yes.
But we created a lot of other connections, and one of the strong connections was you and Ellen.
Yes.
And after I left, she still stayed at Georgia Power Company and got other people connected. So it was a transition.
Let me tell you, and I've said this in other settings, the trip to Birmingham, if nobody, which I really, as I stated earlier, met a lot of people on that bus that I didn't know but Ellen Spiceland will be a person that will be in my life for the rest of my life. Because even after we did this trip, even after David left the chamber, anything that came across for the chamber, Ellen Spiceland would do it for us. She would make sure we were included. If I sent her something that we were sending out that needed an I dotted or a T cross, she did it. So I appreciate, and certainly now as I've gotten older and have learned to really appreciate and really know people for who they really are, that will be probably one of my highlights of that trip to Birmingham.
Well, I'll tell you too, I think the trip took you personally in your role and elevated it to a level where if you called a superintendent, he'd call you back. You'd call the county manager or the chairman of the board they would call you back. Talk a little bit about how that pulled
the trip for me is, I'm not sure exactly how long I had been the president of the NAACP, but that trip to Birmingham put me on a level that carries to this day. There is very few people that do not know Deanne Bonner, because after I came back from Birmingham on that trip, my relationship with Otis Brumby, with the MDJ, people that see me, oh, I saw you in the paper. That was based on the fact that, that trip gave me visibility and a responsibility to be what we had went on that trip for. To know that we all got to live here together, to put us on a level of knowing that we want relationships. We're not going to, a prime example for me would be, if someone came to the NAACP and complained about they were being mistreated at Georgia Power. David Connell and I and Georgia Power have a great relationship. But David Connell also knew that before the NAACP would do anything against him or any other company, we had a relationship that we can call and hear their side. Because you can come and complain, but then we're going to give the people that you're complaining against an opportunity to tell us their side of it. So all of these things happen based on going to Birmingham in 2006 on that bus trip that will be and is something that should be in the history of Cobb County.
One small thing, and it was well thought out by you and me, and of course Ellen on all the important details of the trip, was coming back. We watched the Clash of the Titans. Is that what it's called?
Yes, that will be
Clash
the
of the Titans,
movie.
yeah. So that was really about the same issue. So just put that in the script, that coming back, one specific example of the uniqueness was to have 25 whites, 25 blacks watching a movie
Together
called Clash of the Titans on the way back from Birmingham.
On the way back from the trip, we had, of course, you're on a bus and they had the videos. So the Clash of the Titans was played to these 50 people that were on that bus. That, it was almost what we were reliving, how those kind of things can happen. You have to learn to listen to others and take into account who they are and what they bring to the table. So that movie, but I want to backtrack a little bit about while we were in Birmingham. That night, like, we were together, we went to visit the museum, but the next day, we had people from Birmingham that came in. We had a meeting. It was a meeting, a conference or whatever, with Birmingham leaders that told us what they had did to make Birmingham work a little bit better. So we took a little bit of what they were doing in Birmingham and saying, oh, we could do this in Cobb County too. And to this day, that did work. Did
you know David Hankerson was on that trip? Do you remember that?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people didn't know him.
And what he was a county manager.
Yeah, but a lot of people didn't really
know that he was the county manager for Cobb County. It was very significant to me. And I was trying to think of so many of the people that were on that bus that later, after 2006, that we knew each other in such a personal way that just like, especially being with the NAACP, I mean, there is not, of the 6 cities that were in Cobb County, that was a jurisdiction of our branch, there is not one city in Cobb County that we could not call after I came back, that we would not get a response back. Like say before going there, you probably would never hear from them. But afterwards, it was just a matter of respect, and because they saw us in a different manner.
Some branches of the NAACP, intentionally or unintentionally, create friction, not partnerships.
Right.
Friction. We've come up with a term called the Cobb Way, which is why Cobb's successful. People can sit down and talk about issues
Mm-hmm.
without race or age or gender. We've been doing it for a long time. This was a critical time to start that process of folks agreeing that we're all focused on the same thing. Let's figure out how to work and not have riots and things that they're not productive. They may cause people to think, but we could sit down and have honest discussions. And you did that with Sam Mullins, you did it with Tim Lee. You call up, they say, fine. I remember one time about the Braves Stadium being built. You called me and Tim Lee and said, I want to make sure that we have some African Americans on the construction site.
Exactly. That one of the things about what we wanted from what we learned from that experience of knowing people that you could call when there was an issue, and being an organization like we are, we're on the forefront of people's rights, and if people's rights are being misused, that's what we're supposed to come in at. But one of the things that we learned after that trip is almost like we don't need to fight. We need to do this behind closed doors. I'm going to call up a David Hankerson and say, what, if y'all gonna have the Braves here, we're not sitting at the table with y'all about that Braves deal. But I'm sitting here in the room with you and Mike Plant, and I'm telling y'all that if you're gonna build that stadium, you need to give African Americans a seat at the table. Not necessarily, but we need jobs for our kids that will be home for the summer. We need internships to be a part of the Braves coming to Cobb County.
Zip cut. It's got everything I could want.